Thanks for joining us on the XRHealth podcast, Therapy Without Limits, real conversations shaping the future of therapy. And joining us today on the podcast is support coordinator Kaz Norman. Kaz currently works for Roadmap Support Coordination, and she has over 15 years experience working in the disability field and provides level 2 support coordination in the Canberra region. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kaz.
Oh, thanks for having me. What a great intro. Forget how long I've been working in the field until somebody points it out.
Well, I think we're very lucky to have you. So if you can tell us a little bit more about your role as a support coordinator and all of the various participants that you support.
Sure, yeah. So a support coordinator, I think, is extremely important to people on the NGIS because the system it's very confusing. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork. So a coordinator can help get all those things, have that understanding, but also they can bring a wealth of knowledge for the local area for supports. So whether you're new to the NGIS or you're changing, providers, we always stay abreast of all the things that are in the area, new programs, new providers, what's happening in the field, what are the changes coming through for NGIS. So a coordinator can really help you connect with all those, but also keep on track and be there for when you have meetings and things with the NGIS. That's really important because we know what reporting people need, how to stay in the guidelines, how to make sure your funding's on track. There's a lot of moving parts. A lot of it is really, really good teamwork, and a coordinator just has the octopus that keeps everything sort of going but connected and the people talking together. And it's sort of like a case management role. So I think coordinator I know I'm talking about myself, but I think they're worth their weight in gold, really, for anyone on the NGIS. And sometimes people say when they've engaged someone, oh, wow, I'm so excited you're here. I didn't know all of this. And it just can really help having someone in your corner. I don't specify with one disability. I have a range of clients who all different disabilities. So I have one of my participants actually is one of the fastest runners in the Paralympics. So he competes for Australia. And then I have people who are really quite complex and older and have quite degenerative disabilities, muscular dystrophy. I have a range of people who have intellectual disability or on the autism spectrum. It's just very varied. I don't specialize, but I match really well with people and what they need and my experience. So yeah, it's good having a variety of people, keeps everything interesting.
I love the octopus analogy.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, what a great analogy.
That's a great analogy because support coordinators, I think, need so many various skills in different areas, and just the fact that you've got that over encompassing blanket of needing to be able to reach into different areas and have different contacts, and the knowledge that you need, I think, is really important. And I think I need a support coordinator. I would love a support coordinator to sort my life out, but
I think everybody needs one.
Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately, not on the NDIS. Yeah.
Look, I think the support coordinator role is, like you said, worth its weight in gold, Kaz. And I think that having someone fighting in your corner that understands the bureaucracy side of things and understands the logistical side and the admin side, as well as every other hat in the octopus arms that you said before, kind of understand is really critical to a family support network. But what are some of the things that you find people often misunderstand about the role of a support coordinator?
Yeah, so I think support coordinator in any other field, like in out of home care, foster care, anything like that, we're called case managers. And you might have someone who's a worker who's allocated to you, and in this space it's called coordination. And there's also, I think, pretty close to that is a plan manager. And a plan manager is someone who makes sure your invoices are paid and they put things through to the NGIS portal and they liaise with providers. But really, there's a step in between the participants. There's participant, there's coordinator and allied team, and then there's plan manager who do invoicing. And so I think sometimes those roles can get a bit blurry. And that's why I've said we work as a team, because if there's a problem with invoicing or you're setting up a participant, the plan manager doesn't come in until that happens. And they're not really a source of information to get new things going, or they don't have that, they sort of have an accounting background, but not the case management background, if that makes more sense to people, I guess. And parents can be, and participants themselves can be at a bit of a loss to where to go for information. I think also there is talk under the NGIS that they are thinking about in the future of having plan management more integrated into the role of coordination as well, which I think is probably their aim at knocking down two roles that are sort of similar, but they have very different reach and very different outcomes. So that may be something that happens in the future, who knows? Something else that's misunderstood is I think not a lot of people understand that, like you said with the octopus, that there's so many different things. You're sort of not leading, a participant to do things. You're connecting and keeping everything moving and keeping that progress. So it's hard to describe how that works with people because it's, a coordinator can be someone you talk to every week if it's something that you really need, or it can be only there when you have a paperwork need or an issue with a provider, or you want to change something, or the NGIS has been in contact. So it is different with every person. It's very individualized. It depends on how people want to engage. So I think, the most misunderstood role about the coordinator is what don't they do, and the difference between some of the titles. And yeah, like I said, I don't want to toot my own horn, but saying that coordinators are really, really valuable. It's because we can get that teamwork, really drive those outcomes, make sure you're protected under the NGIS, and yeah, also be your one point of contact. It's so overwhelming for people when there's so many different providers and so many in a region. You don't know where to go, who do you trust? So having one person that you initiate things with, and then, greater team gets involved is, I think people feedback that to me all the time, that it's really valuable.
So I think that from like a therapist perspective looking in, the participants that really need the support coordinators are those that can't do those things on their own. So their disability may be leading them to deficits that limit their ability to basically do that, to run all of those processes, the organizing, like just being able to organize those things. So people who have intellectual disabilities, or maybe they've got really high fatigue levels, or maybe they've just got so much pain that they can't concentrate. So having that support coordinator to then take that load off them is just so invaluable for the scheme. And I truly do believe that it's so important for the support coordinator to be sourcing the providers for them, or helping them to connect. You mentioned connections with those providers. So when you are considering connecting a participant with a provider, what is the most important factors that you consider?
Yeah, so I think coordinators know their region really well. And Canberra, I'm in the Canberra region, so it is sort of a small community here, but it would be different in the cities where there's a lot more providers per person, I guess. But here we really stay connected with the community and know people. So networking is something that's done all the time because we can support each other, find out different changes in the area, but also get to know people. For me, it's about mostly trust and integrity, I would say, because you have a budget, you have a plan, you know what people need, and then trying to match that up with a provider. Sometimes, we all know that there are some providers out there who aren't very, they're not very credible and can actually misuse people's funds or not deliver in the goals that you need. So you sort of have to be working with providers who you not just have established rapport with, but you know that they act in the best interest of participants, and you know that they have honesty and their invoices are fine. They will be there when the person needs them. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they are happy to work as a team, happy to liaise with you, provide good reporting. All those things are really important. And you can tell that initially when you engage with a provider. if they've said, well, we're going to charge for this, everything under the sun, where it doesn't really make sense, or they don't have an understanding of what that client needs, and you sort of have a mismatch at the start. So that's where things can get really murky. And for people that are already overwhelmed, already caring for somebody, or they have significant barriers to understanding, it can be really tricky. So sometimes teams, you want to find providers that match people really well, that particularly with things like OTs, for example, you want them to be not just knowledgeable on different disabilities, but also the NJS space. You want them to be charging the right amounts. Is there ways you can work with them to make things flexible, as in cutting down travel time, or can they see multiple people at the same time in the same family, or are they open to that sort of negotiation? Are they listening to the people and what the needs are? Are they delivering that? How do they talk to the participants? How engaging are they? There's so many factors, there's so many things, and I think you've got to sort of be good at discerning people, which, yeah, that can be a challenge of the field for sure. But in a small community like mine, the people that are really good, what people may be offering, and you have experience because you've seen them work with other participants.
So I'm hearing that having past experience, being flexible, meeting the goals of the participant, treating them with the respect, and prioritizing engagement are all important factors.
Yeah.
Was the question? Factors when you're looking at choosing a provider.
Yeah. And also some creative things, like you have to think really outside the box sometimes. There may not be a solution that for an issue that somebody's having, but can we try something new? Can we meet with new providers and see what they're about? Giving things a go. It may not be the exact solution to the issue that's presented, but yeah, finding different things until something clicks is, we need the flexibility, you need the creative thinking. I think with some of the therapies and supports, it's almost like online dating, finding a really good support worker to match with a participant, because there's so many factors involved, not just life experience and character and, are they reputable? Do they work for someone that's registered or at least really well run? How do they match with that person? Do they have the right set of skill that that person's looking for? So you almost have to know your person really well and then meet the support workers, and it's can be a challenge, and that's something that you have to change if it's not working. But there are some really fantastic support workers, and the sad thing is when they leave, you've then got to try and find a replacement and find some consistency for people, because yeah, we have some fabulous people in the role. And yeah, when you make a really amazing match, it's just perfect. So I'll give you an example. With one of my participants was looking to publish a book that he had worked on and written, and it was a labor of love over a sort of year. And he has a vision impairment. So there's a lot of challenges around the technology, getting things written, meeting with providers, even accessing where some of the meetings were taking place with, potential publishers. And we found a support worker who is in his region, who is available for work, who had experience in publishing and worked in libraries, and he had all this time to give. So it went from talking about the book for a year to matching with this support worker. And, he had this fabulous nature that the person really, really responded to, and this respectful, calm demeanor. And within a couple of months, the book was done and being, published and shared and talked about and celebrated. And yeah, it was just such a success story. Another one was where we had a person who required quite complex care, and it's really challenging to find a lot of skilled support workers. And we found someone who was finishing their studies in nursing and matched with this person. But not only that, they speak the same language, they have the same interests, they're around the same age. And it's really rare that those situations happen. Yeah, so.
I love that. And you've given some really amazing like outcomes that you've managed to achieve through like knowledge of the region and people matching or online dating, as you kind of alluded to, like trying to find the right fit. And you're exactly right. And it is really challenging to find therapists that match clients, especially working with kids. Like, as you know, I'm 34, like you've got to have, for a lot of the kids that we work with, I find, I have to have a really high knowledge of things that are interesting to them at the moment. Otherwise, they just don't find any interest in you if you can't find common ground, and that's the same with anyone. So yeah, some of those stories you shared are really, really quite heartwarming, and really lovely to hear. From an overall perspective, though, what would be a successful outcome for you as a support coordinator? What would that look like?
Successful outcome is where you can sort of leave people to progress on their goals. So you're not having to be involved and so much every week with keeping things going that they naturally evolve on their own. And people are happy to, you've built capacity enough in the participant to keep things going. They're happy with their therapy. They're happy with their goals. They've achieved an employment and that's stable. Having good health and them being in a good place is a good outcome. And, you want to keep that going. You want to be no, making sure there's no roadblocks in the way to that and just doing your own part of the role kind of quietly in the background. And you hope that the allied team around them have everything they need to keep going. That's a really good outcome when things are just steady, things are good. When you're actually not hearing from people, that's a good thing. And, you're sort of, quietly proud and happy thinking that everything's going really well. Sometimes that's not always the case, particularly with the NGIS, as we know, and things change all the time, people's health and their greater teams, things can be up and down. So it's just about being responsive, I think, and you don't really get to a finish goal and go, okay, we're done now. This is achieved. This is finished. A lot of goals for people are ongoing and disabilities are lifelong. So no news is good news in my book. When people are happy, they're just out there living their best lives and you hear about their great stories and how things are going for them. And you just, it's quite boring. You're just doing the paperwork for people when they're out there. Everything's tracking smoothly. That's what you want. You don't want to have to be called upon all the time. You've built really great capacity. You've built a great team. People are doing great things. Then, yeah, that's the best outcome, I think. In terms of working with XRHealth, I think I've had a few success stories because talking about that creativity with getting people therapy, one of my participants has quite severe anxiety and a fear of going outside, so agoraphobia, and access to therapy for him has been really up and down. He hasn't found success with it because he did like the therapist, but getting to that appointment, there's so many barriers in place for him. There's just the courage to get ready and go outside and then get to the place and are there obstacles on the way for him that cause him anxiety? Is there traffic and loud noises? Are there sirens? Are there anything that's going to dysregulate him to not be able to even walk into that therapist's office? And having something like XR at home where he's comfortable, he's already in his safe spot, he's approaching things from a perspective of bravery and being completely regulated, and having someone not really in your face. Like, it's hard sometimes to be in person with a therapist and you take away all those things when you're engaging online just through, and I think the app and the software really deliver things that are so calming that I don't think people get in person with some therapies. So being able to match that person to XR therapist has had fantastic success. After some of those sessions, he's, actively said to me, this is really important. I really enjoy it. And he doesn't say that about a lot of things. So that's a really good, that's a great review.
That's a great story. So what you've mentioned is that one of the barriers for your participants is access. So particularly people who have a disability that limits them in leaving the house or being mobile enough to leave the house. And just to clarify, this particular person was doing VR therapy,
Yes,
doing
virtual
the VR.
reality
Yeah.
therapy. So telehealth with a psychologist, I think, yes.
Yeah. So there's that factor of using the headset, which is kind of where we come into it at XRHealth, having the VR therapy as one of the options that our therapists can use. So that particular participant just had the option of not just sitting and talking to someone, but being able to actually put a headset on and have an experience, an immersive experience that works on your physiology, reducing your heart rate, increasing your breathing capacity, or reducing your respiratory rate, and having that relaxation effect when putting on the headset, but then also moving into mindfulness. And we have cognitive behavioral therapy applications in there as well. So just having that big suite of almost another world, a virtual world inside the headset that the participants can access. And it's almost creating a connection for that person who can't leave the house, that there's another world that they can step into. So it's opening up that environment and opening another experience for them. And it's so great to hear that was particularly successful for that participant. So while we're talking about barriers, how do you navigate wait lists and shortages with providers, and how does that impact the decisions that you're making in creating referrals?
It's quite tricky sometimes. In this region, we don't have a lot of providers for each kind of therapy, or each support need. So sometimes finding online or telehealth or alternate deliveries is really important, and trying to get things creatively. I don't think wait lists are, well, I guess being a short region, if we have physical OTs here who have wait lists that sometimes are 12 months long, or psychiatry and psychology are also much longer than that. And with everybody trying to access through the health system, the psychologists we have here are also the same providers for NDIS clients. So yeah, wait lists are huge. Staff shortages, we find that there are a lot of people that are studying at the universities here, but we're not seeing a great number of more people entering the NDIS space once they finish their study. And I think that's a huge shame, because they're working in this region, they're studying in this region, but they don't go into these, say, for example, occupational therapy here, because that would be a big boon to how many occupational therapists we have on the ground here. So one of the occupational therapists that I use are actually online, and they do amazing reporting, and they are more accessible. They don't have a wait list. So sometimes you need to access these providers in a very urgent way. So if you're going for a planning review and you need a functional capacity that's up to date, or you need proper evidence, you need a recommendation letter, you can't wait 6 to 12 months. I think one of the biggest barriers would be funding instead of wait lists, because you can sort of work within that and pre-plan and pre-book things to try and help with that, the wait list. But I think the biggest thing is funding, and that's what it comes down to, choosing the right people. Are you going to have someone that charges you so much in transport that you can't even afford the session? And how much are they charging to do reports and notes? And is it consistent with the delivery of what you really need? What people really need on the ground is great support. They need great reporting. They need amazing evidence. They need all these things. And yeah, they can't wait for it either. And then on the other hand, you've got to make sure it fits in with someone's NDIS plan. NDIS don't really sometimes have a greater understanding of what these things cost for people. They just say, well, give us evidence. But sometimes the reports can be up to 8 to 10 hours and cost nearly $2,000. And if you're talking about accessing the NDIS to start with, you need those reports to start with. And a lot of that is financially out of reach for so many people. It's almost a design in the system that it's inaccessible to start with.
Speaking of evidence and providing evidence in the NDIS, so just noticed in the media lately that there is talk of requiring more evidence-based report writing, and that is coming up over the next kind of 2 years.
Yeah. So I think it was, I think Mr. Butler was commenting recently that part of the changes that are coming out is their new functional tests. So when you have an occupational therapist where you say, I want to talk to you about my person who has let's say Down syndrome, for example. And when you have a functional capacity, you're trying to learn what that person needs, what their current capacity is, what support they might need, and then you want to evidence that. So we know that Down syndrome is not something that's curable, but we want to know how it affects each person individually, what supports they have around them. So your report has to be written in a way that you really encompass this person. Everybody is different, even if they have the same diagnosis. So if somebody has Down syndrome and they're quite able to get up, get themselves dressed, get their own food, access transport, and go to work, well, that's different than someone who is maybe struggling with communication and doesn't have many supports, is not living, they might be living by themselves, they might have no ability to create their own food or access transport or any of those things. So it's completely different. So your evidence needs to state around that person's disability, and the changes that they're talking about is not doing different tests. They just want to, I think, take it away from the OT space. So they're looking at, this is where a lot of the community are a bit upset at the moment, because they're talking about the same sort of test that OTs do with people, like about life skills and what their day-to-day function looks like. But they're talking about the NDIS doing those in under 3 hours. And then that set assessment is for someone forever.
Doesn't allow for change as well, because people might get better, and especially younger people who are still developing, getting older, getting stronger, whatever it is, or people getting worse because some disabilities are actually neurodegenerative, or they might have a disability that gets worse as you get older, like muscular dystrophy. So
Yeah.
it doesn't allow for the future changes that are going to happen in that person's lives. So
It doesn't also encapsulate when someone's getting an assessment, if they say they're doing something well, it's because of the supports that they have in place. So when you take those away, then they suddenly can't, they don't have that function. So someone can get dressed and go up and go to work with those supports. Without it, they would be stuck at home. So it doesn't encapsulate that at all.
Yeah, and I think my example that I immediately think of someone whose circumstances change and they may not be positive or negative, or they may not be getting better or getting worse. It's, change of circumstances. So someone in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy, they may not be able to transfer once they hit a certain age because they've physically become too old to be able to do it on their own. They need a hoist. And having someone in a situation where their funding says, oh, they have a wheelchair and they just transfer because that's what they did when they were 10, thinking however many years in the future, that's when, that's a very, very alarming thing for me. But I think with all the changes that are coming in the NDIS, is there any other information or upcoming changes to the NDIS that you could give any advice to on participants who may be a bit worried about the changes?
Yeah, it's what I'm hearing a lot from people at the moment. And I've also been to a few of our local events where people getting together to talk about how things are happening. There's also been some politicians having some roundtables and some community consultation, because the fear was immediate and all encompassing. I think you can understand where a family member who's already struggling to receive the support that they need and evidence everything that they need, and they might be denied for certain things. And to hear that that might be taken away as well has, really caused a lot of issues for people. So a lot of it is the proposed changes they haven't set in stone yet, but we've heard a few things. So particularly with the assessments, they are thinking that might start in 2028. So we have a little bit of time. I would also advise people that with the OT reports, they have said the minister has agreed that they will look at previous evidence for people, so it won't be disregarded. You won't be stuck by just a 3-hour assessment with someone who may or may not understand your circumstances. And to your point around having changes, I really wish they had some kind of system in place where they understood that, yes, if you have this diagnosis like cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy, it doesn't get better. It gets worse. It's just a matter of when. So why can't they cost into people's future funding the cost of some of the equipment that they commonly need and the support that they commonly need, rather than waiting for it to happen? And we sometimes have to fight for 12 months to get some of that equipment where they desperately need it, at the time, and we've already evidenced it, we've already asked for it, we've had all the reports and people in that we need to say that they need this equipment. Why is that not just an understood piece of information at the start? If this person is accessing the NGIS for muscular dystrophy, they will need quite likely all these things. So let's allow for that, rather than every single year making them pay $2,500 to say the same things over and over and denying it, and then costing more money to go to appeals. And yeah, that sort of made me think of one of my people who every single time we ask for a bit of equipment, the delay is almost 6 months has been the shortest time we've been able to get equipment. And some of the changes that they're proposing, that one, they don't allow for those future changes, but they also don't really future plan for that person.
It's so lovely to hear your passion about this. Like, yeah, I think all of us here are really passionate about this subject and making sure our participants get the best possible care that we're able to give. And I think with all the things that are happening from a government level, where we have to rally and we have to advocate and we have to protest and we have to do a lot of groundwork to try and build up, awareness across the country. I think about, what we can do from within and how can we inspire, from a provider point of view. So I guess my closing question for today, it may be a big question, I'm not sure, but what advice would you give providers wanting to better support participants?
I would say to providers, ones that we're working with that are already doing the right thing, sort of keep doing that, keep down that track where you're working with people to provide really good intel about what you're doing, because I think a lot of the times the NJS see a report and if it's not written really well, they don't understand. So you have to approach giving evidence and having good case notes, having good shift notes, having good recommendations. All those things are extremely important, because if I have to try and chase up someone and say, okay, I understand why you're so important to this person, can you give me this evidence in paperwork in a way that we can build a story? Can we tell the story of this person? So you have to be really, really good with reporting and working with coordinators and families to say, this is what we need to prove, this is what we need to say. That is something that is so important. And if it's not done right, I've seen really poor outcomes for people. Also, keeping in mind creative ways to stay under the budget, because I know it's hard for a lot of providers to sort of keeping afloat with funding, but also not being outrageous in overcharging for things. And what are some creative ways we can deliver supports? That's really important, because we've had to make the decision where going with providers who, can make things a bit more affordable has been the only way that person still accesses therapy.
Well, I think we'll wrap up there, Kaz. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
on the podcast. It's been very insightful, and your information has been just so great, I think, for us and the broader community. And we're really looking forward to releasing this episode. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I hope that's helped. Thanks for having me.